I want to tell you a story my grandfather told me when I was 19 years old. He didn't tell it to lecture me. He didn't hand me a book. He just pulled his chair close to mine one quiet summer evening on that old wooden porch. Lit a cigarette he rarely smoked anymore. Looked out at the yard for a long moment. And then he said, "Son, I'm going to tell you something I should have been told a long time ago. Something that cost me more than money ever could. And I'm telling you now, so you don't have to pay the same price I did." Ugh. His name was Earl. Earl Raymond Calloway. Born 1,931 inches, a small town outside of Dayton, Ohio. Raised in a two-bedroom house with no indoor plumbing until he was 8 years old. He was a quiet man. Not cold. Not unfriendly. Just quiet. He didn't make speeches. He didn't offer advice unless you asked. So when he said he needed to tell me something, when he actually used those words, I stopped everything and listened. The story he told me that evening started with $400. It ended with something no amount of money could ever buy back. Ugh. If you've ever been asked to lend money to someone you love, a brother, a sister, a cousin, a close friend, stay with me. Because what Grandpa Earl told me that evening might be the most important thing I pass on to you today. 3 things. Why we say yes. And why that instinct can quietly destroy a relationship. What happened between Earl and his brother? And the 3 rules he lived by for the rest of his life. Earl grew up during the Depression. He was the oldest of 5 children, and from the time he was 12, maybe even younger, he understood one thing above everything else. Family takes care of family. That wasn't a motto on the wall. That was how life actually worked in their house. Every week, without complaint or accounting. He worked 2 jobs through most of his 20s. Days at a hardware store. Evenings loading freight at a warehouse on the edge of town. So he could help put his youngest sister through nursing school. He co-signed on his mother's apartment when she fell 2 months behind on rent and had nowhere else to turn. He was the kind of man who showed up when you called, even when it cost him sleep or money or a weekend he didn't have. And he never, not once in his life, kept a running tally of what he'd given. He would have considered that shameful. Ugh. His younger brother Thomas was different. Not a bad man. Just younger in his thinking, as Earl always put it. A little looser with money, a little quicker to ask for help. Thomas was the charming one in the family. The one who walked into any room and immediately made everyone feel at ease. On a Tuesday evening in August of 1968, Thomas came by Earl's house unannounced. Earl and his wife Margaret had just finished the dinner dishes. Thomas sat down at the table. But Earl noticed his leg bouncing. He had that look. The same look he'd worn as a boy. Something was wrong. Thomas laid it out plainly. His truck had broken down 3 weeks earlier. The job at the mill required reliable transportation. His supervisor had already given him one warning. Without the truck fixed, he'd lose the position. He needed $400 to get the truck repaired. He'd pay it back within 2 months. 8 weeks, no more. He said it looking Earl straight in the eye, with his hand flat on the table, the way a man makes a real promise. Earl looked at Margaret across the table. She gave a small, quiet nod, the kind that said, "You already know what you're going to do." He came back with a plain white envelope and set it on the table. Then he said, "You'll get me back when you can. Don't rush it." Thomas picked up the envelope, said thank you, and walked out into the August evening. Ooh. 2 months passed. No word from Thomas. Earl didn't bring it up. He told himself Thomas was still getting settled. The baby was young. A newborn costs money. The job had probably had some rough patches after the warning. He understood. That's what family does. You give people room. 3 months went by. Earl discovered the water heater was corroding. He fixed it himself over 2 weekends. 4 months gone. He still said nothing to Thomas. But something had quietly shifted inside him. Something he hadn't expected and didn't want to admit. A low, steady resentment. Not hot anger. Not rage. Just a heaviness that sat right behind his ribs every time the subject crossed his mind. He'd started keeping score. He hated that he was keeping score. But he was. 6 months after that August evening, Earl and Margaret attended a family birthday celebration at his mother's house. Full house. Aunts, cousins, kids running through every room. Thomas was there, and he was in fine form that evening, laughing at the table, telling a story that had everybody going. Earl noticed the new work boots. Good quality. Leather. He heard Thomas mention a weekend fishing trip he'd just taken with 2 friends up near Lake Erie. Earl waited the entire evening for Thomas to pull him aside, to press even a folded 20 into his palm and say, "I haven't forgotten, Earl. I'm still working on it." Thomas never did. Not a word. Not a look. Not a single acknowledgement that the money had ever changed hands between them. And that was the moment Earl said something inside him quietly broke. Not with anger. Quietly. The way a floorboard gives way. You don't notice it until you step on exactly the wrong spot. Near the end of the evening, Earl pulled Thomas into the hallway. He kept his voice low and steady. He wasn't going to make a scene. "Hey," he said quietly, "whenever you get a chance, I could really use some of that back. No rush. Just whenever works for you." Thomas's face changed immediately. The warmth drained right out of it. His shoulders went back. His jaw tightened. His voice went flat. "Earl, I told you I would pay you back. You know things have been tight for us. The baby, the bills. Don't put this on me right now. Not here. Not at Mama's." And just like that, The conversation was over. Thomas walked back into the living room. Earl quietly got his coat. He and Margaret drove home in silence. She held his hand the whole way. Neither of them said a word. It wasn't just about the $400 anymore. Over the next 2 years, something slow and painful happened between the two brothers. Thomas came around less and less. At family gatherings, he was always in a different corner of the room. The easy laughter they'd shared their whole lives got replaced by polite, careful conversation. The kind you have with someone you used to know. And the heaviest thing Earl told me, the sentence I've never forgotten, was this: "Son, I didn't lose a brother over $400. I lost a brother over the fact that $400 changed what we both thought of each other. And once that changes, there's no going back." After that summer of 1968, Earl made 3 quiet rules for himself. He never wrote them down. He never framed them on the wall. But he lived by them every single day for the rest of his life. Rule 1. If you can't afford to give it away and never see it again, don't lend it. Before he ever answered another money request from family, Earl asked himself one honest question. Can I hand this over right now? Call it a gift. Walk away. And never think about it again. And truly be okay with that? If the answer was yes, he'd give it freely. No strings. No tracking. Just a gift. With love, and he meant it. But if the answer was no, if he needed it back, if losing it would hurt him, if he'd start keeping score, he wouldn't lend it. He would offer something else instead. His time, his labor, his presence. But not money he couldn't afford to lose. Because the moment you lend money you truly can't afford to lose, you're not being generous. You're selling your peace of mind and your relationship on an installment plan that neither of you ever agreed to. Rule 2. Never make a family member feel like a debtor. Earl said, the moment money changes hands inside a family, something invisible changes alongside it. On both sides. The person who borrowed starts carrying guilt. They start avoiding you. Because your face reminds them of something they can't fix right now. And the person who lent starts keeping score. Noticing things. New boots. A fishing trip. Those quiet observations, left unaddressed, become resentment. Then distance. Then a wall. Earl's rule was simple. If you give money to family, give it cleanly. Don't drop hints. Don't bring it up at the table. Don't mention it in front of others. And if you truly cannot let it go, have the honest conversation before a single dollar changes hands. Not after. Before. Rule 3. Your relationship is worth more than any dollar amount. Earl said this is the rule that sounds simple. Until the moment actually comes. Because when your brother is sitting at your kitchen table, and he needs help, and he's looking at you with that look. Every instinct in your body wants to say yes. But Earl said, sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is say this: I can't lend you money, not because I don't care about you, but because I care about us too much to risk what that money will do to us. Let me help you a different way. He said that sentence is one of the hardest things a person can say to someone they love. But it's also one of the most honest. And honesty, in the long run, costs far less than silence. Earl wished someone had said those words to him before that Tuesday evening in August of 1968. He might have found another way to help Thomas. He might have kept his brother. I'm not telling you this to make you afraid of helping your family. I'm telling you this because Grandpa Earl spent nearly 30 years carrying something he didn't have to carry. If only someone had given him a little wisdom before that August evening. So, before you say yes to the next person you love who comes to you with an outstretched hand, ask yourself Earl's question first. Can I afford to give this away and never see it again? If yes, give it freely, with love, no strings attached. If no, give something else instead. That's the $400 lesson. It didn't come from a book or a podcast. It came from a porch in Ohio, from a quiet man who lived it, carried it for 30 years, and one summer evening trusted me enough to pass it on. If this story spoke to something you've been through, I'd love to hear it. Drop a comment below and tell me your story. And if you know someone who could use this lesson before it costs them more than money, share this video with them today. I'm your host, and this is Last Generation Stories, where the wisdom of the generation before us becomes the guide for the generation after. We'll see you next time.